us your name?
Hi, my name's LeeAnn Sherwood, and my name's LeeAnn Sherwood. I grew up here in Santa Cruz. My dad was the administrator for the Garfield Park Village where all the old folks lived. So I grew up taking care of old people, and he was the associate pastor at the Circle Church. So I grew up a preacher's kid here in Santa Cruz, excelled in gymnastics, and I ended up going away to college in Eugene, Oregon. And when I came back after I got my degree in cultural anthropology, I got addicted to crack cocaine on the east side in a mansion with a rich guy for 2 years, and I decided that that was not acceptable. And so I just left the country. I lived out of a backpack for 10 years. I started out in New Zealand. I started, some friends of ours lived there, so I went to visit them, and I started a water fitness business for the summer, because I started all the water fitness businesses in Santa Cruz in 1979. So I did that there, and then I went back to him like an idiot. He'd lost everything. He was a multimillionaire. We ended up living in a 14-foot-long trailer that we stole for 4 years. Oh, okay. We lived in Mexico, in Cabo San Lucas for a year, and built cabinets as illegal aliens and almost got deported. So that was, but we didn't do coke for that whole year. So we came back, and I left him again, New Zealand, Mexico. We traveled Southeast Asia on a shoestring for 6 months. And I met a woman in Chiang Mai who invited me to come to Tokyo to teach English. So I came back, nannied for my friend, flew to Tokyo for the summer, and then flew to Tokyo for the fall, and ended up teaching. I made $8,000 in 3.5 months, keeping the conversation going in English because I don't speak a word of Japanese. They just want. It was really awesome living in Tokyo, and my rent was only $300 a month. I was in a rent-controlled apartment in Tokyo. So I saved $8,000. I ended up in Italy for 3 years, where I did. I worked in as a nightclub dancer. I did a flash dance, buck naked routine on a marble stage. Came out front handspring, buck naked. Okay.
So you were a gymnast.
That's right. So that's what I did, is I put that in my act. And we had like a choreographed can. And so I did that. My cousin lives there, so I went to stay with her for a month, learned to speak the language because I speak French fluently. So in 3.5 months, I became fluent in Italian because nobody spoke English, and it was sink or swim. So then I ended up working on an American Army base, training lifeguards for the American Red Cross for the other 2. That was like the first year. The other 2 years I worked on an Army base as a waitress, and they knew I was a lifeguard, so they recertified me to be a lifeguard training instructor, and I trained all the lifeguards on Camp Darby in Pisa, Italy. So I got pregnant. I wanted to have a baby. I was 33, biological clock's ticking, and so I picked an 18-year-old GI, and yeah, we had some fun. And then he left me for another woman, and I ended up in an Italian hospital for the last 3 months, trimester of my pregnancy. We were going to get married, and I got pregnant. And then he left me for another woman, and I ended up in the hospital for 3 months. Boy, did my Italian get good. Yeah. And I ended up having a C-section and went back to the Army base because I already had a job in the hostessing in the restaurant until, and I was going to work in the child care because I was certified to work with children in Santa Cruz since when I was 18. I started teaching gymnastics at the Watsonville YMCA, and that's how we started all the water fitness businesses. Started right here in Santa Cruz in Watsonville, the Watsonville YMCA. We started the whole. Hello, sorry.
Dog scooter.
There we go. Okay, so
And you just wrote a book.
And I ended up in Florida for the last 25 years. When my son was 2, they shipped me to Myrtle Beach, South fucking Carolina, where my son's paternal grandfather was KKK. So my first degree is in cultural anthropology. So this was grist for my anthropological mill. So I stayed there, and the first year I started stripping because there was nothing else. He looked at me and he said, "You better start dancing, darling. You're not going to make any money waitressing this time of year." And my son is a direct descendant of the McCoys from the Hatfields and the McCoys.
Oh, wow.
McCoy, yeah. Great cultural. So I ended up stripping, and the first year I saved $12,000. We went down to Florida. I bought a house. That was in '95, and then I got sober in 2001. Struggling, I was a binge user, which most crack cocaine users are, and I was drinking. So I'm an alcoholic too. So it was just not acceptable to an old jock, that I was going to live like that. We're all health nuts, So I got sober when he was 7 and went back to school and finished I finished a psychology degree. I was working in mental hospitals. I was working on the men's floor of a mental hospital, and working in the field of addiction and working as a court liaison for women in distress. I was the court liaison who went to court with the women to help them face their batterers, this moral support. So I worked at Women in Distress. This is all volunteer work because I was getting my certification for addiction for So for that, but as it turned out, I finished the 3 degrees. I did one in psychology, and I couldn't pass the math because I have a panic disorder. So then I switched and I did the whole sociology degree, and I still couldn't pass the math because I will end up on the floor in the fetal position. And it's a brain. I was almost starved to death in Modesto, California when I was a baby and burned with cigarettes, and my parents had adopted me when I was 18 months old and gave me the most wonderful life, but I still have brain damage.
Okay.
I have traumatic brain injury, so I have, and another thing too is in all of the years that I was in America, like through college and everything, I was date raped 9 times. Good old American date, once by an ex-boyfriend and his friend when I was passed out. I went to the hospital and they threatened me and dropped the charges. You know, same old story that we always get. So I have PTSD. And
your life story is amazing. And I'm like, the MC Hammer song, like, Can't Touch This, or whatever.
oh, thank you.
Yeah, like that's like your title. Like, no matter what happens to you, you are like thriving.
Well, my mom always said I was one step ahead of disaster. And
okay, that's your book. That's your title.
One step ahead of disaster, or Pollyanna, because my name's LeeAnn. The Perils of Pollyanna.
Yeah. Okay, you've got a good title.
We got all sorts of. Well, the funny thing is,
so how do we find your book?
it's on Amazon. Look
Okay.
It's
And what's it
Amazon
called?
Books. It's called Around the World on a G-String.
On a G-string. That's good too. Okay, it's so great to meet you.
Wait, I gotta tell you one
Okay.
more thing here is when I was practicing springboard diving when I was 11 at Harvey West Park, the guy who invented aerials out here, who's one of the most famous surfers in history, fell in love with me and he was 12. He chased me at Santa Cruz High with a camera because he was the school photographer and I was the star gymnast and softball player. He caught me when I was 16. I didn't see him for 42 years and we just got married.
Love that.
Yeah, amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story.
What are your names?
I'm Mimi, and that's
Mimi.
Kasha.
I'm Kasha. Yeah.
Kasha, Mimi, LeeAnn Sherwood.
LeeAnn, so
Look
great
up
to
my
meet you.
husband, Kevin Reed Callahan.
Okay.
Kevin Reed Callahan.
Love
and
it.
The first picture's a mugshot. He was homeless. We're living in our van and I'm doing a chapter on homelessness.
Excellent.
And we're chasing the police around. The ACLU shows up, I call her, and we chase them off all the time
Oh,
when
wow.
they try to tow people's RVs.
Amazing,
Will do.
LeeAnn.